She was forced to marry a billionaire in a wheelchair, but no one knew the man she once saved in the rain would become her husband. What if the stranger you helped with your last dollar turned out to be the one holding your entire future? They called her invisible, unwanted, a burden to her own family, until one desperate deal turned her life into a prison dressed like a fairy tale. He thought she married him for money. She thought she had lost her freedom forever, but neither of them knew the truth would change everything. This is the story of Maya Carter, a woman who was given away like a transaction, and the moment she realized she had always been the one with the power to change everything. The doors opened slowly, and the light hit her first. Warm, golden light spilled across the marble floor of the chapel, catching the soft shimmer of her white dress as she stepped forward. The room was silent in that way only wealthy rooms could be. Quiet not because there was nothing to, but because everyone was waiting for something important to happen. Maya Carter stood at the entrance, her fingers tightening around the bouquet in her hands. The flowers were white roses, delicate and perfect, arranged by someone who had never met her and didn't know that her hands were trembling. Outside, the California sun shined over Beverly Hills like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. Inside, Maya felt like she was walking into something she could not escape. The music began, soft piano, slow and elegant. It echoed through the high ceilings, past the stained glass windows, past the rows of people dressed in designer suits and silk dresses. They turned to look at her one by one. Some smiled politely. Some whispered behind their hands. Some looked confused, because nothing about this made sense. Maya swallowed, forcing herself to take a step forward. Then another. The dress was heavier than she expected, or maybe it was everything else weighing her down. At the end of the aisle, waiting beneath a canopy of white flowers, sat Ethan Whitmore. He didn't stand. He didn't move. He didn't even look at her. Ethan Whitmore, the billionaire heir to one of the most powerful financial empires in the country, sat in his wheelchair, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. His dark suit was perfectly tailored, his hands resting calmly on the armrests, his face carved into something cold and distant. He looked like a man attending a meeting he had no interest in, not a man about to get married. Maya's chest tightened. She had imagined this moment before. Every girl does, in some quiet corner of her mind. Walking down the aisle, meeting the eyes of someone who chose her, someone who wanted her. But Ethan didn't look at her. And the truth was, she wasn't sure she wanted him to. A quiet murmur passed through the crowd as she walked. She could feel their eyes on her skin, could almost hear the thoughts forming behind their polite smiles. Who is she? Where did she come from? Why her? Maya lowered her gaze, focusing on the floor beneath her feet. Each step echoed softly, the sound swallowed by the luxury of the room. Halfway down the aisle, she caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection of a polished pillar. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. The dress, the makeup, the diamonds resting gently at her neck. She looked like she belonged here, but she knew she didn't. Behind her, just a few steps back, her father walked with quiet confidence. Marcus Carter looked proud. That was what struck her the most. Not relief, not emotion, pride. His chin was slightly raised, his suit pressed sharp and clean, his eyes scanning the room like a man who had just secured something valuable. Like this entire moment, this entire day, was something he had earned, not something he had taken. Maya felt something twist inside her chest. She didn't turn to look at him. She didn't trust herself to. Because if she did, she might stop walking. And she knew what would happen if she stopped. She reached the end of the aisle. The officiant smiled warmly, his voice gentle as he spoke a few welcoming words. But Maya barely heard him. The sound faded into the background, like everything else in the room, because now she was standing beside Ethan, close enough to hear his breathing, close enough to see the faint tension in his jaw. Still, he didn't look at her. Not yet. Maya stood there, her hands shaking slightly, her heart beating too fast. This was real. There was no more time, no more delay, no more hoping something would interrupt, that someone would step in and say this was a mistake. The silence stretched for a moment longer. Then, slowly, Ethan turned his head. Their eyes met, and for just a second, everything shifted. There was something there, something brief, almost invisible, a flicker of recognition, a hesitation, like he had seen her somewhere before, like he was trying to remember, but it disappeared just as quickly as it came. His expression hardened again, the distance returning to his eyes. Maya felt her breath catch, so he didn't remember. Or maybe it didn't matter. The officiant began speaking again, words about love and commitment and partnership filling the air, words that felt distant, like they belonged to someone else's story, because this wasn't love, and it wasn't a choice. Maya's fingers tightened around her bouquet again. She could feel it now, the weight of everything she wasn't saying, the truth pressing against her chest, begging to be heard. She wanted to speak. She wanted to stop this. She wanted to turn around and walk out of those doors and never look back. But her father was standing behind her, and she could still hear his voice in her mind. You either marry him, or you figure out how to survive on your own. Maya closed her eyes for a brief second. When she opened them again, the world had narrowed down to this moment. The vows, the silence, the decision already made for her. Across from her, Ethan watched her now, his gaze steady, searching, as if he was trying to understand something that didn't quite make sense, as if he knew there was more to this than what everyone else saw. The officiant turned to her gently. Maya, do you... Her heart pounded so loudly she almost couldn't hear the rest. And suddenly, a single thought cut through everything. If he knew the truth, would he still be sitting there? Would he still say yes? Or would he walk away and leave her standing here alone? Maya's lips parted slightly. The answer sat right there, just beneath the surface, hidden behind the white dress, hidden behind the silence. Hidden behind the lie everyone in this room was pretending not to see. And for the first time since she stepped into that chapel, she wondered if anyone would ever truly understand why she was here, or what she had already given up just to stand in this place. The room held its breath, waiting, and then Maya spoke. Yes, the words slipped out quietly, almost too soft to belong in a room that grand. But it was enough. It echoed just slightly against the high ceilings, just enough for the officiant to nod and continue. Ethan didn't react, not in any way that anyone else could see, but Maya felt something shift in the air between them. Not warmth, not connection, just acknowledgement. Like two strangers signing the same document, agreeing to terms neither of them had written. The ceremony moved forward quickly after that. Words were exchanged, rings were placed, applause followed. It was over before Maya could fully understand what she had just agreed to. People stood, smiling, clapping, some even wiping away tears as if they had just witnessed something beautiful. Maya stood there, still, her hands resting at her sides now. The bouquet was gone. Someone had taken it without her noticing. Everything was happening around her, but none of it felt like it belonged to her. She turned slightly when she felt a hand on her arm. Her father. Marcus Carter leaned in just enough so that only she could hear him. You did the right thing, he said. His voice was low, steady, satisfied. Maya didn't answer. She couldn't, because for the first time since the ceremony began, something inside her wasn't quiet anymore. It was breaking. The limousine ride to the reception felt longer than it should have. The city lights passed by in blurred streaks through the tinted windows. Palm trees, glowing signs, luxury storefronts. Everything moved too fast, like the world didn't have time to notice what had just happened. Maya sat across from Ethan, her hands folded in her lap. Neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't peaceful. It wasn't comfortable. It was heavy, like a question neither of them wanted to ask. Ethan finally glanced at her, not long, not deep, just enough to confirm what he already believed. "You didn't have to look so scared," he said, his voice calm but distant. "People might think I forced you." Maya lifted her eyes slowly. For a second, she almost laughed. "But nothing about this was funny. I wasn't thinking about what people might think," she said softly. Ethan studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he looked away again. "Good," he said, "because I don't care what they think either." That was the end of the conversation. And somehow, it said everything. The reception was louder, brighter, more crowded. Crystal chandeliers hung above a ballroom filled with people who didn't know her name but smiled at her anyway. Waiters moved quietly between tables, carrying trays of champagne and small plates of carefully arranged food. Music played, soft at first, then louder. Laughter filled the room. Maya stood beside Ethan as guests approached them one by one. "Congratulations, make a beautiful couple. We're so happy for you both." Maya nodded, smiled, thanked them over and over again. It became automatic, like breathing, like pretending. At one point, she caught her reflection again, this time in a mirrored wall behind the bar. Her smile looked real. That scared her more than anything. Later that night, after the last guest had left and the lights began to dim, Maya found herself alone for the first time since the morning. She stepped out onto the balcony, the cool night air brushing against her skin. Below, the city stretched out in quiet elegance. Up here, everything looked calm, simple, distant. Maya placed her hands on the railing and let out a slow breath. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel it. Everything she had pushed down, everything she had swallowed. The truth. This wasn't her life. This wasn't her choice. This was something that had been decided for her long before she walked down that aisle. And she had said yes anyway, not because she wanted to, but because she knew what would happen if she didn't. She closed her eyes, and suddenly, the memory came back. Not the wedding, not the ballroom, something else, something quieter. Chicago, cold air, the sound of buses stopping and starting, a flickering streetlight above a nearly empty bus stop. Maya stood there in her worn jacket, her breath visible in the night air. Her shift at the soup kitchen had ended late, and the last bus was already running behind. She was tired, hungry, but she was used to that. She adjusted the strap of her bag and sat down on the bench. That's when she saw him. At first, she didn't look twice, just another man sitting alone. But then she noticed the wheelchair, and the way he was hunched slightly forward, his coat not quite enough to block the cold. People passed by without stopping. Some glanced, most didn't. Maya watched for a moment, then she stood. She walked over slowly, careful not to startle him. "Hey," she said gently, "you okay?" The man looked up. His eyes were sharp. Alert, guarded. "I'm fine," he said, but his hands were shaking. Maya noticed. She didn't say anything about it. Instead, she pulled off her jacket. "It's colder than it looks," she said, placing it over his shoulders before he could refuse. He blinked, surprised. "You don't have to." "It's okay," she said quickly. "I'm not that cold." That wasn't true, but she didn't wait for him to argue. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small container. "Here," she added. "It's just leftovers, from the kitchen." He hesitated, then slowly he took it. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Maya shrugged lightly. "Because you look like you need it." It was that simple. To her, it always had been. She stepped back, pulling her sleeves down over her hands. "Do you have a ride?" she asked. He shook his head once. Maya glanced at the empty street. Then she pulled out her phone. "I'll call you one," she said. "You don't have to." "I know," she replied softly. "But I want to." She didn't ask his name. He didn't ask hers. The car arrived 10 minutes later. Before he got in, he looked at her again. Longer this time, like he was trying to remember her face. "Thank you," he said. Maya smiled slightly. "Take care," she replied, and then she turned away. She didn't watch the car leave. She didn't think about it again, because to her, it was just another moment, just another small thing, just another person who needed help. Maya opened her eyes. The balcony came back into focus, the city lights, the quiet, the night. She let out a slow breath. That moment felt so far away now, like it belonged to a different version of her, a version that didn't know what was coming, a version that still believed kindness was simple, still believed it didn't come with consequences. Behind her, the balcony door slid open. Maya turned slightly. Ethan sat just inside, his wheelchair angled toward the room, his gaze resting somewhere distant. He didn't look at her, not yet. But something about the silence between them had changed. Not warmer, not softer, just different, like there was something unspoken sitting in the space between them. Waiting. Maya looked back out at the city, and for the first time that night, a single thought crossed her mind. What if the man she had helped that night hadn't forgotten her at all? The thought lingered in Maya's mind longer than she expected. She didn't turn around right away. She stood there on the balcony, her fingers lightly gripping the railing, watching the quiet stretch of city lights below. Somewhere in the distance, a car passed, its headlights cutting through the dark like a brief interruption in an otherwise still night. Behind her, Ethan didn't speak, but she could feel his presence now. Not distant the way it had been earlier. Not entirely. Just closer. Like he was watching her. Trying to understand something he couldn't quite put into words, Maya let out a slow breath and finally turned. Ethan was looking at her now, not sharply, not coldly, just observing. There was something different in his eyes this time. Something quieter. "You're thinking about something," he said. It wasn't a question. Maya gave a small, careful shrug. "Just a long day," she replied. Ethan held her gaze for a moment longer. Then he nodded, like he didn't believe her, but wasn't going to push. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow's going to be busy." Busy, that was one word for it. Maya nodded once and stepped past him, back into the room. The door slid shut behind her with a soft click. And just like that, the moment was gone. The next morning didn't feel like the beginning of a new life. It felt like walking into a place that had already been decided for her. The Whitmore estate stood quiet under the soft California sun. Tall windows reflected the sky, and the long driveway curved through perfectly trimmed hedges like something out of a magazine. Inside, everything was polished, clean, precise, too perfect to feel real. Maya stood just inside the front hallway, her small bag in her hand, unsure of where to go. No one had told her anything. No one had asked her what she needed. It was as if she had been placed there and expected to figure out the rest on her own. A woman in her late 50s approached her from the far end of the hall. She was neatly dressed, her posture straight, her expression professional but not unkind. "You must be Mrs. Whitmore," she said. The words sounded strange. Maya hesitated before answering. "Yes, I guess I am." The woman nodded. "I'm Helen," she said. "I manage the household. If you need anything, you can come to me." Maya offered a small smile. Thank you. Helen studied her for a brief moment, just enough to notice the hesitation, the uncertainty, but didn't comment on it. Your room is upstairs, she said. I'll have someone bring your things. My things, Maya repeated quietly. Helen glanced at the small bag in her hand. Anything else will be arranged, she said. Maya nodded again. Of course, arranged. Everything here was arranged. The room was beautiful. Large windows, soft white curtains, a bed that looked like it had never been slept in, fresh flowers on the nightstand. It should have felt like a dream. Instead, it felt like a place she didn't belong. Maya set her bag down slowly and walked toward the window. From up here, she could see the garden, wide, open, perfectly maintained. Not a single thing out of place. No noise, no life, just silence. Back in Chicago, even the quiet had sound. Buses passing, people talking, the hum of the city always in the background. Here the silence felt heavier. It was watching her. Maya pressed her hand lightly against the glass. For a moment, she closed her eyes, and then, without meaning to, her mind drifted again. Back to the place that had always felt more real than this. The soup kitchen smelled like warm bread and coffee. It was never quiet there. There was always movement. People coming in, people leaving, voices overlapping, chairs scraping lightly against the floor. Maya stood behind the counter, tying her apron as she smiled at an older man who stepped forward. Morning, Mr. Jenkins, she said. You're early today, he replied, his voice rough but kind. Couldn't sleep, Maya said lightly. That makes two of us, he chuckled. She handed him a tray, placing an extra piece of bread on it when she thought he wasn't looking. He noticed anyway. You always do that, he said. Maya shrugged. Maybe you just always catch me. He smiled, shaking his head as he moved along. That was how it was. Small things, quiet moments. Nobody clapped, nobody noticed. But to her, it mattered. It always had. A young mother came in next, holding a child on her hip. The little boy's eyes looked tired, his head resting against her shoulder. Maya leaned forward slightly. Hey there, she said gently. You want some apple slices today? The boy didn't answer, but he looked at her. That was enough. Maya added the slices to the tray without waiting. Sit anywhere you like, she told the mother. Thank you, the woman said softly. Maya nodded. It wasn't much, but sometimes it was everything. Mrs. Whitmore? The voice pulled her back. Maya opened her eyes and turned. A young maid stood at the door, holding a neatly folded set of clothes. These were sent up for you, she said. Maya nodded, stepping away from the window. Thank you. The maid placed them carefully on the bed. For a moment she lingered. Then she added, almost under her breath, if you need anything, just ask. There was something in her tone, not quite warmth, not quite distance, just caution, Maya noticed. But she didn't question it. I will, she said. The maid nodded and left. Maya looked down at the clothes. Perfectly tailored, perfectly chosen, perfectly not hers. She sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers brushing lightly over the fabric. And for the first time since she arrived, a quiet thought settled in her chest. In this house, everything had a place. Everything had a purpose. Everything was chosen. Except her. Downstairs, voices carried faintly through the hallway. Maya didn't mean to listen, but she couldn't help it. She doesn't look like she belongs here, someone whispered. Another voice responded, quieter but sharper. She doesn't. But she's here, a pause. Then, softer still. For how long? Maya stood still at the top of the stairs, her heart tightening just slightly. It wasn't anger. It wasn't surprise. It was something deeper, something she had felt her whole life, being seen and still not being accepted. She turned away slowly and walked back into her room, closing the door behind her. The silence returned, and this time, it felt even louder. Later that afternoon, she found herself back downstairs, drawn by the faint sound of movement. Ethan sat in the living room, a laptop open in front of him, papers spread neatly across the table. He didn't look up when she entered, but he knew she was there. "You don't have to stay in your room," he said. Maya paused. "I wasn't," she replied. Ethan nodded once, still focused on the screen. "Good." There was a moment of silence. Then, without thinking, Maya spoke. "Do you always work this much?" Ethan glanced up this time. "Do you always ask questions like that?" Maya almost smiled. "Only when I don't know the answer." He studied her for a second, then he closed the laptop. "I work because I have to," he said. Maya nodded slowly. "I understand that." Ethan leaned back slightly. "Do you?" Maya met his gaze. "Yes," and for a brief moment, something shifted again. Not trust, not yet, but something close to recognition. Like two people who had lived very different lives, but understood something the same way. Ethan looked away first, and Maya realized something she hadn't expected. He wasn't as untouchable as everyone thought. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the only one hiding something. The thought lingered between them, unspoken. Ethan turned his attention back to his laptop, fingers moving with quiet precision across the keyboard. Numbers, reports, decisions that affected companies, people, entire industries. Maya watched him for a moment longer than she meant to. There was something about the way he worked, focused, controlled, distant, that reminded her of someone else, her father, not in kindness, not in warmth, but in the way everything else seemed to matter more than the person standing right in front of them. Maya looked away. "I should probably find something to do," she said softly. Ethan didn't stop typing. "You don't need to do anything," he replied. Maya hesitated. That sounded simple, but it wasn't, because doing nothing meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. Still, she nodded. "Okay." She turned and walked out of the room. The hallway felt longer this time. Quieter. Each step echoed just enough to remind her she was alone. She passed by a large mirror again and caught her reflection, this time in plain clothes, not the wedding dress. Still unfamiliar. Still out of place. Maya kept walking. She didn't know where she was going, but her feet carried her forward anyway. Past rooms she hadn't seen, past doors that stayed closed. Until she reached the kitchen, it was larger than the entire first floor of her old home. Clean, organized, everything in its place. A woman stood near the counter, preparing something carefully. She looked up when Maya entered. For a moment, there was silence. Then the woman straightened slightly. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her tone wasn't rude, but it wasn't welcoming either. Maya offered a small smile. "I was just looking around." The woman nodded once. "This area is usually for staff," she said. Maya's smile faded just slightly. "I didn't realize." The woman didn't respond. She simply turned back to her work. Maya stood there for a second longer than she should have. Then she nodded to herself and turned to leave. "Wait," the woman said suddenly. Maya paused. "Yes?" The woman glanced at her again. Not with warmth, not with hostility, just curiosity. "You're the new Mrs. Whitmore," she said. It wasn't a question. Maya nodded slowly. The woman studied her face for a moment. Then she said quietly, "You don't look like you belong here." The words weren't meant to be cruel, but they still landed that way. Maya lowered her eyes slightly. "I get that a lot," she replied. There was no bitterness in her voice, just truth. The woman didn't answer, and somehow that silence said more than anything else could have. Maya turned and walked out of the kitchen. Later that afternoon, she found herself outside. The garden stretched wide, green and perfect under the soft sunlight. A fountain sat at the center, water flowing gently, the sound almost too calm. Maya walked slowly along the stone path. She didn't know what she was looking for. Maybe nothing. Maybe just space, a place where she could breathe without feeling watched. She reached a bench near the edge of the garden and sat down. For the first time since she arrived, she allowed herself to just sit, no expectations, no roles, no pretending. And then, she remembered, not the wedding, not the mansion, but the moment everything had changed. The night her father came home later than usual. The house had been quiet, too quiet. Maya had been in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner no one had invited her to share. Ashley's laughter echoed faintly from the living room, mixing with the sound of a television playing something she didn't care about. The front door opened, heavy footsteps followed. Maya didn't look up right away, but she felt it, the tension, the shift in the air. Marcus Carter walked in, his tie loosened, his face tight with something he couldn't hide. Ashley noticed first. "Dad?" she called. "You okay?" Marcus didn't answer. He walked straight past her, straight past the living room, straight into his study, the door closed harder than it needed to. The house fell quiet. Maya wiped her hands slowly and stepped out of the kitchen. She didn't mean to listen, but she did. Voices rose behind the closed door. Her father and someone else, her stepmother. "You said everything was under control," the woman's voice snapped. "I thought it was," Marcus replied. "That's not good enough. There were contracts, deals that fell through. Investors pulled out. So what does that mean?" A pause. Then, "It means we're losing everything." The words hit harder than any shout. Maya felt her breath catch. Inside the study, silence followed. Then her stepmother spoke again, lower now. "There has to be a way." "There is," Marcus said. Another pause. Longer this time. "What kind of way?" Maya stepped closer to the door without realizing it. Her heart was beating faster now. Something was wrong. She could feel it. "He'll help," Marcus said finally. "Who?" "The Whitmores." The name meant something. Even to Maya, everyone knew the Whitmores. Power, money, influence. "They won't just help you," her stepmother said. "Not for nothing. They won't have to." Maya's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" the woman asked. Another pause, then, "They want something in return." Silence again, thicker this time. "What?" the woman pressed. Marcus exhaled slowly. One of the girls, the words barely made sense at first. Maya frowned, her mind trying to catch up. One of the girls, what, to marry their son? Everything went still. Maya's fingers curled slightly at her sides. "No," her stepmother said immediately. "Not Ashley. I didn't say Ashley." Maya felt it then. Before the words even came, she already knew. "You mean—" "Yes," Marcus cut in. "Maya." The sound of her own name felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. "She'll do it," he continued. "She doesn't have a choice." Maya stepped back from the door, slowly, silently. Her chest felt tight, too tight. She tried to breathe, but the air didn't come the way it should. Inside the study, the conversation continued, but she didn't hear it anymore, because everything she needed to know had already been said. Maya blinked. The garden came back into focus, the fountain, the sunlight, the quiet. Her hands rested in her lap now. fingers trembling slightly. That was the moment her life stopped being hers, the moment she became something else, something decided, something traded. She looked down at her hands, still the same, still hers, but everything else had changed. Behind her, footsteps approached slowly. Maya didn't turn right away. She knew who it was. Ethan stopped a few feet away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said, "You look like you're remembering something you'd rather forget." Maya let out a quiet breath. Something like that. Ethan moved closer, his wheelchair rolling softly over the stone path. He didn't look at her directly. "Was it your idea?" he asked. Maya frowned slightly. "What? This," he said, gesturing faintly between them. "The marriage." Maya looked at him then. Really looked. And for the first time since she met him, she didn't hide the truth. "No," she said. The word was steady, clear, real. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "I figured," he murmured. Maya tilted her head. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze shifted toward the fountain. "Because people who want something usually act like it," he said. "You don't." Maya swallowed. "That doesn't mean I had a better option." Ethan nodded slowly. "No," he said. "It doesn't." Silence settled between them again. But it wasn't the same as before. It wasn't empty. It wasn't cold. It was something else. Something closer to understanding. Maya looked out at the garden again. Then she asked quietly, "What did they offer you?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Control," he said. Maya blinked. "Control of what?" "Everything," he replied. His voice was calm, too calm, like it didn't matter. But Maya felt it, the weight behind it. She nodded slowly. "So we were both part of a deal." Ethan glanced at her. "Looks that way." Maya let out a small, humorless breath. "Funny," she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow slightly. "What is?" Maya looked at him. "Neither of us chose this, and yet we're the only ones living it." Ethan didn't respond, because there was nothing to say. And for the first time, they both understood exactly how that felt. But understanding didn't change what had already been done. It didn't undo the deal. It didn't give either of them a way out. The wind moved softly through the garden, brushing against the leaves, carrying a quiet stillness between them. Maya looked down at her hands again, then slowly stood. "I should go inside," she said. Ethan didn't stop her. He only nodded once. Maya turned and walked away. That night, the mansion felt colder, not because of the temperature, but because the silence had started to settle into her bones. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the soft white sheets beneath her hands. Everything in the room was untouched, perfect, like it had been waiting for someone else, someone who belonged here. She lay back slowly, staring up at the ceiling, and then, just like before, her mind pulled her back. Not to the wedding, not to the garden, but to the moment everything had truly begun to break. "Open the door." Maya's voice had been hoarse from crying. Her hands pressed against the wood, her forehead resting against it, as if she could somehow push through. "Please, just open the door." No answer. Only silence. She stepped back, her chest rising and falling too quickly. The room felt smaller now, tighter, like the walls were closing in around her. There had been no warning, no conversation. Her father's voice, calm and final. "You'll stay here until you understand what's at stake," and then the door had closed, locked. Ma looked around the room. Her room, the same one she had grown up in, the same walls, the same window, but it didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt like a cage. She moved toward the window, pulling at it instinctively. It didn't open. Of course it didn't. Her father had made sure of that. Maya let out a small, broken laugh. "Of course," she whispered. She turned back toward the door and knocked again. Softer this time, Dad. Please, she said, we can talk about this. Footsteps approached. Her heart lifted for a second. Dad? But when the door opened slightly, it wasn't him, it was Ashley. Standing there with her arms crossed, leaning casually against the frame like this was all some kind of game. Well, Ashley said, her voice light, almost amused. You look terrible. Maya stared at her. Can you tell him I need to talk to him? She asked quickly. Please. Ashley tilted her head. About what? She said. The wedding? Maya swallowed. I'm not doing it, she said. I can't. Ashley laughed softly. You don't really think you have a choice, do you? Maya stepped closer. I'm serious, she said. I won't do it. Ashley's smile faded just slightly. Then you won't have anywhere to go, she replied. The words were simple, but they landed hard. Maya shook her head. He wouldn't do that, she said. He's my father. Ashley raised an eyebrow. You still believe that? Silence filled the space between them. Maya felt something inside her shift, something small, something fragile, breaking. Please, Maya whispered. Just tell him I need to talk to him. Ashley looked at her for a moment longer. Then she sighed. Fine, she said. I'll tell him. She stepped back. The door closed again, locked. Maya stood there, staring at it, waiting. Minutes passed, then more. But no one came. The first night had been the hardest, not because of hunger, not because of fear, but because of hope. Maya had believed, just a little, that her father would change his mind, that he would come to the door, that he would open it, that he would say this had all gone too far. He didn't. The second day, hope started to fade. By the third, it was gone. Maya sat on the floor, her back against the bed, her knees pulled close to her chest. The light from the window had shifted, casting long shadows across the room. She hadn't cried in hours. There was nothing left to cry. Her throat hurt, her head ached, but her mind was quiet. Too quiet. That was when she heard it, a soft sound at the door. Maya looked up. Maya? The voice was low, careful, not her father, not Ashley. Musa? She whispered. Yes, he replied. Musa was one of the drivers, kind, quiet. One of the few people in the house who ever spoke to her like she mattered. Are you okay? He asked. Maya almost laughed. I don't think that matters, she said. There was a pause. Then she heard something slide under the door, a small bottle. Water. Maya crawled forward, her hands shaking as she picked it up. Thank you, she said softly. You shouldn't be in there, Musa said. I know. I can't open the door, he added quickly. If I do, I understand, Maya said. And she did. Everyone in that house was afraid of her father. Musa hesitated. Then he said quietly, I heard what they're planning. Maya closed her eyes. So did I, she replied. Silence again. Then, I'm sorry, Maya swallowed. It's not your fault. Footsteps approached from the other side of the hallway. Musa moved quickly. I have to go, he said. Thank you, Maya whispered. And then he was gone. The hallway fell silent again. Maya leaned back against the door, the bottle still in her hand. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she opened it and took a slow drink. The water felt cold, real, something she could hold on to. Later that evening, the door opened again. This time, it was her father. Marcus Carter stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Maya stood up quickly. Dad, have you changed your mind? He asked. No greeting, no concern, just the question. Maya stared at him. Can we talk first? She asked. There's nothing to talk about, he said. Maya's chest tightened. There is, she insisted. You're asking me to marry someone I don't even know. I'm asking you to help your family, he cut in. Maya shook her head. This isn't help, she said. This is… What? He snapped. Maya's voice trembled. This is you trading me. The words hung in the air. Marcus's expression hardened. Watch how you speak to me, he said. Maya took a step forward. Then tell me I'm wrong, she said. Tell me this isn't about money. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Maya felt the truth settle in her chest like a weight. Why me? She asked quietly. Marcus's jaw tightened. Because Ashley has a future, he said. The words came out without hesitation, without regret. Maya blinked. I don't, she whispered. Marcus looked at her like the answer was obvious. This is your future, he said. You should be grateful. Grateful. Word echoed in her mind. Maya felt something inside her finally give way, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, completely. She took a slow breath, then another, and when she spoke again, her voice was steady. If I say no, she said, what happens? Mark didn't hesitate. You leave, he said, with nothing. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything before it. Maya nodded once, slowly, like she was accepting something she had already known. Okay, she said. Marcus frowned slightly. Okay? He repeated. Maya looked at him, not with anger, not with fear, just clarity. I understand, she said. Marcus studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. Good, he said. The wedding is in 4 days. He turned and walked away. The door closed behind him, unlocked this time. Maya stood there, alone, free to walk out. But with nowhere to go, she looked around the room one last time, the walls, the window, the life she had known. Then she sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. And for the first time, she stopped fighting. Back in the present. Maya opened her eyes. The memory faded. The room returned. The mansion, the quiet, the life she hadn't chosen. She stood by the window again, the sun beginning to set outside. The sky turned soft shades of orange and gold. Beautiful, unreachable. Maya rested her hand against the glass, and a single thought moved through her mind. She hadn't said yes because she believed in anything. She had said yes because she had nowhere else left to go. That truth stayed with Maya long after the memory faded. It followed her through the quiet halls of the Whitmore estate. It sat beside her at breakfast, where no one asked if she had eaten. It lingered in the air when the staff moved around her, careful but distant, as if unsure how to treat someone who didn't quite belong. Days passed, not many, but enough for the silence to grow familiar. Maya learned quickly that this house had its own rhythm. Ethan worked most of the time. Meetings, calls, numbers that seemed to stretch beyond anything she could imagine. Helen kept everything running smoothly. The rest of the staff followed quiet routines, and Maya tried not to get in the way. One afternoon, she found herself back in the kitchen again. This time, she didn't stop at the door. She stepped inside. The same woman from before stood at the counter, slicing vegetables with precise, practiced movements. She didn't look up immediately, but she knew Maya was there. You're not lost this time, she said. Maya shook her head slightly. No, she replied. I just thought I could help. The knife paused mid-slice, then continued. We don't need help, the woman said. Maya nodded. I know, she said. But I'm used to working. It feels strange not to. That earned her the glance. Brief, curious. What kind of work? The woman asked. Maya stepped closer to the counter. Cooking, cleaning, serving, she said. A little bit of everything. The woman studied her for a moment. Then she slid a bowl across the counter. Wash them, she said. Maya blinked. Are you sure? If you're going to stand there, you might as well do something useful. It wasn't kindness, but it wasn't rejection either. Maya nodded and moved to the sink. The water ran warm over her hands. Familiar, simple. For the first time since she arrived, she felt steady. The woman watched her for a moment longer, then said quietly, "You're different." Maya glanced up. "Different how?" The woman shrugged. "You don't act like someone who married into this house," she said. Maya gave a small, tired smile. "That's because I didn't marry into it," she replied. The woman didn't respond, but something in her expression shifted, just slightly. Later that evening, the house was quieter than usual. The sun had set, leaving soft shadows across the long hallway. Maya walked slowly, her footsteps light against the polished floor. She wasn't sure where she was going, only that she didn't want to sit alone in that room again. A faint sound drifted from down the hall. Music, soft, almost hesitant. Maya followed it. It led her to a door slightly ajar. Inside, a piano sat near a large window. Ethan was there, his back to her, his hands resting on the keys, not playing, just sitting. Maya hesitated at the door, then knocked gently. Ethan didn't turn. "Come in," he said. She stepped inside. The room felt different from the rest of the house, less perfect, more lived in. Books lined the walls. Papers sat stacked in careful piles. The piano looked older than everything else, its surface worn just enough to show it had been used often once. "You play?" Maya asked softly. Ethan's fingers brushed the keys without pressing them. "Used to," he said. Maya stepped closer. "Why did you stop?" Ethan let out a quiet breath. "Because things change," he said. Maya nodded. "I guess they do." Silence settled between them again. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was thoughtful. Maya looked at the piano. Then, without thinking, she reached out and pressed a single key. The sound echoed gently through the room. Ethan glanced at her. "You shouldn't touch things that aren't yours," he said. His tone wasn't harsh, just guarded. Maya pulled her hand back. "Sorry," she said. Ethan watched her for a moment. Then, slowly, he pressed a few keys. A simple melody filled the room. Soft, incomplete, but real. Maya listened. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She just listened. When the sound faded, she realized something. "You're not bad," she said. Ethan gave a short, dry laugh. That's not usually the compliment people go for. Maya shrugged. "I don't say things I don't mean." Ethan studied her. Longer this time, as if trying to decide whether to believe her. Then, "Why did you really agree to this?" he asked. The question came without warning. Maya's chest tightened. She could have lied. It would have been easier. But something about the way he was looking at her made that impossible. "My father was losing everything," she said. Ethan didn't interrupt. "He said if I didn't do it, I'd be on my own," she continued. Her voice stayed calm, but her hands tightened slightly at her sides. "I didn't have anywhere to go," she finished. The truth hung in the air between them. Simple, heavy, unavoidable. Ethan looked down at the keys, then back at her. "And you think this was better?" he asked. Maya met his gaze. "No," she said. The honesty in her voice made something shift again, not just in him, in the room, in the space between them. Ethan leaned back slightly. "For what it's worth," he said. "I didn't agree to this because I wanted a wife." Maya almost smiled. "That makes two of us." Ethan's lips twitched, just slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. "For me," he continued, "it was about control." Maya frowned. "Control over what?" "My life," he said simply. Maya looked at him, really looked this time. And for the first time, she saw it. Not just the distance, not just the coldness, but the reason behind it. "You don't like people making decisions for you," she said. Ethan held her gaze. "No," he replied. "I don't." Maya nodded slowly. "I understand that." Ethan raised an eyebrow slightly. "Do you?" Maya took a breath, then said, "My entire life has been people deciding things for me." The words were quiet, but they carried weight. Ethan didn't respond right away because there was nothing to argue with, nothing to dismiss, only truth. He looked away first, and this time, it wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he did. Later that night, Maya lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again. But something felt different, not lighter, not easier, just different. The silence wasn't as heavy, the room didn't feel as empty, and for the first time since she arrived, she didn't feel completely alone, because somewhere in that house, there was someone else who hadn't chosen this life either. Someone else who understood what it meant to be part of a deal that had nothing to do with love. And that thought, small as it was, stayed with her as the night slowly settled in and the story between them began to change. But change didn't come all at once. It came slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed at first. The next morning arrived wrapped in a pale gray sky, the kind of morning where the light felt softer, slower, like the day itself hadn't decided what it wanted to be yet. Maya woke before the house. She wasn't used to sleeping in. Even in a place like this, her body still remembered what it meant to wake early, to move, to do something before the world asked anything of her. She sat up in bed, the silence pressing gently around her. For a moment, she just listened. Nothing, no voices, no footsteps, just the quiet hum of a house too large for the people inside it. Maya stood and walked to the window. The garden below was still, touched by a faint morning mist. The fountain hadn't started yet. The hedges stood perfectly trimmed, unmoving. Everything looked like it belonged in a picture, not in a life. She turned away, dressed, made her way downstairs. The kitchen was empty at first. Maya moved carefully, almost instinctively, as if she were stepping into a space she wasn't entirely allowed to be in. She reached for a pot, filled it with water, set it on the stove. The small, familiar motions grounded her. She wasn't thinking about where she was or who she was supposed to be here. She was just doing something. The door behind her opened quietly. Maya turned slightly. The same woman from before stood there, watching. "You're up early," she said. Maya nodded. "I always am." The woman glanced at the pot on the stove. "You don't have to cook," she said. "I know," Maya replied, "but I want to." The woman didn't argue. She stepped closer, her eyes scanning the counter, the ingredients Maya had already pulled out. "You've done this before," she said. Maya smiled faintly. "A lot." The woman nodded once, then "Don't burn anything," she said. It wasn't encouragement. It wasn't rejection either. And for now, that was enough. By the time the rest of the staff arrived, the smell of coffee and something warm filled the kitchen. Maya stood near the stove, stirring slowly, her movements steady. Conversations began around her. Quiet at first, then softer still. "She's actually cooking. I thought she'd just sit upstairs. Maybe she doesn't know how this works." Maya heard them, every word. She didn't respond, didn't react. She just kept stirring, because she had learned a long time ago that sometimes the best way to be seen was to keep going anyway. Ethan noticed the difference, not immediately, but enough. He entered the dining room later than usual, his chair moving quietly over the polished floor. The table had already been set, but something was different. The food wasn't arranged the way it usually was. It wasn't perfect, but it looked real, like someone had made it with intention, not just routine. Ethan glanced toward the kitchen. Maya stood there, speaking softly with one of the staff. She didn't see him. He watched her for a moment, then said, without raising his voice, "You made this?" Maya turned. Her expression shifted slightly when she saw him. "Yes," she said. Ethan studied the table again, then back at her. "You didn't have to, I know," she replied. There was that word again. I know, simple, but steady. Ethan didn't respond right away. He moved closer to the table, his hands resting lightly on the wheels of his chair. Then he reached for a cup of coffee, took a sip and paused. Not dramatically, not obviously, just enough, Maya noticed. "Is it bad?" she asked. Ethan shook his head once. "No," he said. "It's just different." Maya tilted her head slightly. "Different good?" Ethan looked at her for a second longer than usual. "Yes," he said, and that was it. But somehow, it felt like more. Later that day, the house returned to its usual rhythm. Staff moving, doors opening and closing, quiet conversations drifting through the halls, but something had shifted, subtly, almost invisibly. The looks were still there, the whispers, but now they were mixed with something else. Curiosity, maybe even a small amount of respect. Maya didn't hold on to it. She had learned not to. Respect that came easily could disappear just as quickly, but she noticed. And that was enough. In the afternoon, she found herself back in the living room. Ethan sat near the window, a file open in front of him. He didn't look up when she entered, but he knew she was there. "You're not in the kitchen," he said. Maya smiled slightly. "I'm taking a break." Ethan nodded. "That's allowed." Maya walked a little closer, then paused. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan glanced up. "That depends on what? On whether I want to answer." Maya almost laughed. "That's fair." She hesitated, then asked, "Why do they treat you like this?" Ethan frowned slightly. "Like what?" Maya gestured lightly around the room. "Careful," she said. "Distant." Ethan leaned back. "They work for me," he said. "Not with me." Maya nodded slowly. "That's not what I meant." Ethan watched her, then asked, "What did you mean?" Maya took a breath. "They're afraid of you," she said. Ethan didn't deny it. "Cheer is efficient," he replied. Maya shook her head. "It's lonely." The word landed softly, but it stayed there. Ethan didn't respond right away, because he knew she wasn't wrong. That evening, something happened that neither of them expected. It started small. A tray dropped in the hallway. The sound echoed sharply through the house. Maya turned instinctively and stepped out of the room. A young maid stood frozen, her hands shaking slightly, pieces of broken glass scattered at her feet. I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to." Maya stepped forward. "It's okay," she said gently. She knelt down without thinking, carefully picking up the pieces. "You'll cut yourself," the maid said. "I'll be careful." Her voice was calm, steady, the kind of calm that didn't come from this house, but from somewhere deeper. Ethan watched from the doorway. He didn't say anything, didn't move. He just watched. As Maya helped the girl gather the broken pieces, as she spoke to her like she mattered, like a mistake didn't define her. The maid looked at Maya with something close to disbelief, then gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. Maya smiled. "It's just glass," she said. But it wasn't, not really. And Ethan knew it, because in a house where everything was controlled, where mistakes were rarely allowed, Maya had done something simple, something human, something real. And for the first time, he saw it clearly. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't calculating. She wasn't here for what everyone thought she was. She was just kind. And that realization stayed with him, long after the glass had been cleaned. Long after the hallway fell quiet again, because something inside him had shifted, Not completely, not yet, but enough to ask a question he hadn't considered before. What if he had been wrong about her? From the very beginning. The thought didn't leave Ethan. It followed him through the rest of the evening, settling somewhere deep in his mind, refusing to be ignored. He had spent years learning how to read people, to see through smiles, to recognize motives before they were spoken. It was part of how he'd survived, how he stayed in control, and yet, he hadn't seen her. Not really. The next day, the house felt different, not warmer, but more aware. Maya noticed it first in the small things. The way the maid who had dropped the tray the night before looked at her now, no longer nervous, but grateful. The way Helen paused slightly before giving instructions, as if considering her presence instead of ignoring it. Even the whispers had changed, softer, less certain. Maya didn't let it settle in her chest. She had learned that change didn't always last. Still, she noticed. Late that morning, Maya was walking through the main hallway when she heard voices ahead. Sharp, low, tense. She slowed her steps, not trying to listen, but unable to avoid it. "I don't understand why she's here," one of the staff members said. "She's the wife," another replied. "That doesn't mean anything," the first voice snapped. "We've seen arrangements like this before." Maya's fingers tightened slightly at her sides. "She doesn't act like the others," the second voice said quietly. "That's the problem," the first replied. "People like her, they always pretend at first." Maya stopped walking. The words settled over her like something cold. Familiar. Too familiar. She had heard versions of it her whole life. Not good enough, not the right kind, not belonging. She took a slow breath, then stepped forward, not to confront, not to defend herself, just to keep moving, because stopping wouldn't change anything. It never had. By the time she reached the living room, her chest felt tight again. Not with anger, not exactly, just something heavy. She sat down quietly near the window, her hands resting in her lap. Outside, the garden moved gently in the breeze. Inside, the silence returned. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, and then, "Did they say it to your face this time?" Her eyes opened. Ethan sat across from her. He hadn't been there before, or maybe she hadn't noticed. Maya looked at him. "What?" "The staff," he said. "They weren't exactly quiet." Maya let out a small breath. "I'm used to it." Ethan's expression shifted, not dramatically, but enough. "That doesn't make it acceptable." Maya shrugged slightly. "It makes it predictable." Ethan leaned forward just a little. "That's not the same thing." Maya met his gaze. "No," she said, "but it's the reality." The room fell quiet again, but this silence felt different, tighter, closer to something about to break. The moment came faster than either of them expected. It happened just after lunch, in the dining room. The table had been set again, the same careful precision as always. Maya stood near the end, adjusting a glass that didn't need adjusting. The same two staff members from earlier entered the room. They didn't notice her at first. "I'm telling you," one of them said, her voice low but sharp. "Give it a few weeks. She'll show her true colors." Maya's hand stilled. "She already has," the other replied. "How?" "She's trying too hard." A pause. Then, "No one just gives like that without wanting something back." The words hit harder than they should have, because they weren't new, just repeated. Maya lowered her hand slowly. She could walk away, pretend she hadn't heard, like she always did. But something in her chest, something small, something tired of being quiet, didn't want to move this time. "Maybe not everyone thinks the way you do." The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Both women froze. Slowly they turned. Maya stood there, her posture steady, her expression calm. But her eyes held something they hadn't seen before. Not anger, not fear, just truth. The first woman let out a short laugh. "Well," she said, crossing her arms, "looks like she does have a voice." Maya didn't respond. The second woman stepped forward slightly. "You should be careful," she said. "This house has rules." Maya held her ground. "So does respect," she replied. The room went still, the tension sharpened. The first woman opened her mouth to respond. "She's right." The voice cut through the room cleanly. Everyone turned. Ethan sat at the head of the table. He hadn't been there a second ago. Or maybe no one had noticed him. But he was there now, watching, his expression calm. But his eyes were different, focused, clear. The first woman straightened immediately. "Sir, we were just—" "I heard you," Ethan said. His voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. The room seemed to shrink around it. "I didn't mean—" she started. "Yes, you did," he interrupted. Silence fell, heavy, unavoidable. Ethan looked from one woman to the other, then finally at Maya. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and something passed between them. Not words, something else, something understood. Ethan turned back to the staff. "She is my wife," he said. "Simple, clear, final. And in this house," he continued, "that means she is to be treated with respect. No anger, no shouting, just truth. The kind that didn't leave room for argument." The women lowered their eyes. "Yes, sir," they said quietly. Ethan didn't respond. He simply turned his chair slightly, signaling the conversation was over. The message had been delivered. Maya stood there, her heart beating faster than she expected. Not because of the confrontation, but because of him. Because someone had spoken, for her, without being asked, without expecting anything in return. She looked at Ethan again, but he wasn't looking at her anymore. He had already returned to his work, like it had been nothing, like it had been obvious, like it had been the right thing to do. Maya swallowed. Her chest felt different now, lighter and heavier at the same time, because for the first time in her life, someone hadn't just seen what was happening, they had chosen to stand in it with her. Later that evening, the house felt quieter than usual, but not in the same way. The silence wasn't empty. It was settled. Maya stood by the window again, watching the last light fade from the sky. Behind her, footsteps approached. She didn't turn this time. "I didn't need you to do that," she said softly. Ethan stopped a few feet away. "I know." Maya glanced back at him. "Then why did you?" Ethan considered the question, then said, "Because it was right." Maya studied him, searching, trying to understand. "People don't usually do things just because they're right," she said. Ethan met her gaze. "No," he replied. "They don't." Silence lingered for a moment. Then Maya nodded. "Thank you," she said. Ethan didn't answer, but he didn't look away either. And in that quiet space between them, something shifted again, not dramatically, not completely, but enough. Enough to change the way she looked at him. Enough to change the way he looked at her, because for the first time, neither of them felt like they were standing alone anymore. But connection, even the smallest kind, has a way of uncovering things people weren't ready to face. It started quietly, almost invisible. The next few days moved differently. Maya found herself spending less time hiding in her room. Not because she suddenly felt comfortable, but because something in the house had shifted just enough to let her breathe. She still woke early, still found her way into the kitchen, still moved through the halls like someone who didn't want to disturb anything. But now, there were moments, small ones, where someone would nod at her, where a conversation wouldn't stop the second she walked in, where she wasn't entirely invisible. Ethan noticed it too, not just in the way the staff behaved, but in the way Maya carried herself. She still moved quietly, still kept her distance, but there was something steadier in her now, something that hadn't been there before, and he found himself watching her more than he expected. That afternoon, rain came, soft at first, then heavier, the kind of rain that blurred the windows and turned the world outside into something distant and gray. Maya stood in the hallway, watching the drops slide down the glass. She didn't realize Ethan had come up behind her. "You like the rain?" he asked. Maya turned slightly. "I don't mind it," she said. "It reminds me of home." Ethan leaned his chair closer to the window. "Chicago?" Maya nodded. "Rain sounds different there," she said, louder, colder. Ethan watched the water trail down the glass. "I don't remember the last time I stood out in the rain," he said. Maya glanced at him. "Why not?" Ethan didn't answer right away. Then, "Because I don't stand much anymore." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Maya looked at him, her expression softening just slightly. "I didn't mean—" "I know," he said. There was no tension in his voice, just truth. Maya nodded slowly. Then, almost without thinking, she said, "Sometimes it's not about standing." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What is it about then?" Maya shrugged. "Being there," she said, "even if you're just sitting in it." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then turned back to the window. The rain kept falling, steady, unchanging, and something about the moment felt familiar, too familiar. It came to him slowly, not all at once, just pieces, the way she spoke, the calm in her voice, the way she didn't rush to fill silence, the way she offered something without asking for anything back. Ethan frowned slightly. Something in his memory stirred. A night. Cold air. A bus stop. He shifted in his chair. "You've been in situations like this before," he said suddenly. Maya blinked. "What do you mean, helping people?" he clarified. "You do it like it's nothing." Maya gave a small smile. "It's not nothing," she said. "It just feels normal." Ethan studied her. "Normal to give things away?" he asked. Maya shrugged again. "Normal to care." The word landed quietly, but it stayed. Ethan looked away. His mind was moving now, connecting, searching. "Where did you say you worked?" he asked. Maya hesitated. "Soup kitchen," she said. "Back in Chicago." Ethan's chest tightened slightly. "Which one?" "South Side," she replied. "Near the bus line." Something clicked, not fully, but enough. Ethan's fingers curled slightly against the armrest. "Do you take the bus often?" he asked. Maya nodded. "I used to," she said. The room felt different now, tighter, like something was closing in. Ethan's voice was quieter when he spoke again. "Have you ever helped someone at a bus stop before?" Maya frowned slightly. The question caught her off guard. "I mean, probably," she said. "I've helped a lot of people." Ethan's gaze sharpened. In the rain, Maya's breath caught, just for a second. Then she looked away. "Yeah," she said slowly. "Once." Ethan felt it then, the shift, the confirmation. His heartbeat picked up slightly. "What happened?" he asked. Maya hesitated. Her fingers brushed lightly against the window. "It wasn't a big deal," she said. "Tell me anyway." She glanced at him. Something in his tone made it hard to refuse, so she sighed softly. "There was this man," she said. "He was sitting alone. It was cold. People kept walking past him like he wasn't there. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak." Maya continued. "He said he was fine," she added. "But he wasn't." Her voice softened. "I gave him my jacket," she said. "And some food." Ethan's chest tightened. "And then?" he asked. "I called him a ride," she said. That was it," Ethan repeated quietly. Maya nodded. "I didn't even get his name." The words hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. Ethan stared at her, not with confusion, not with doubt, but with something else, something deeper. "You don't remember anything else?" he asked. Maya thought for a moment, then shook her head. "Just that he looked tired," she said, like the world had already decided something about him. Ethan looked away, because that was exactly how it had felt. That night, that moment, that silence, he had been invisible until she saw him, until she chose to stop. Ethan let out a slow breath, and for the first time since the wedding, his voice changed. "Why did you help him?" he asked. Maya looked at him, confused. "Because he needed it," she said. Ethan shook his head slightly. "That's not what I mean," Maya frowned. "Then what do you mean?" Ethan met her gaze. "Why didn't you walk away? Like everyone else?" The question landed differently, heavier, more personal. Maya held his gaze, then said, "Because I know what it feels like when people do." Silence followed. Not empty, not distant, just full. Ethan looked at her, really looked this time, and everything he thought he knew, everything he had assumed, started to fall apart. She hadn't helped him because of who he was, because she hadn't known. She hadn't expected anything, because she hadn't taken anything. She had simply given, and suddenly, the entire foundation of what he believed about her collapsed. "You didn't recognize me," he said quietly. Maya blinked. "What?" Ethan held her gaze. "That night," he said, "at the bus stop." Maya's heart skipped. The room seemed to tilt slightly. "You?" she whispered. Ethan nodded. Yes, the word landed between them like something fragile and something powerful. Maya stared at him, her mind trying to catch up, trying to connect the man in front of her with the one she had helped. The cold, the rain, the silence. "You were," she started. "Yes," he said again. Maya stepped back slightly, not out of fear, out of shock. "I didn't know," she said quickly. "I know," Ethan replied, "and that was the point. That was everything." Maya shook her head slowly. You wouldn't have done anything differently," Ethan said. Maya paused, then nodded. "No," she admitted. "She wouldn't have." Ethan looked at her, and for the first time, he saw her clearly, not as part of a deal, not as a stranger in his house, but as the person who had chosen to help him, when no one else had. And in that moment, everything changed. Not loudly, not in a way anyone else in the house could see, but between them, something shifted that could not be undone. Maya stood still, her heart still catching up to what had just happened. The man she had helped, the stranger in the rain, the one she had never expected to see again, was Ethan. Her husband. The thought didn't feel real. It felt like something that belonged in someone else's story, not hers. "You should have told me," she said softly. Ethan didn't look away. "I didn't know how," he replied. Maya frowned slightly. "You didn't know how to say, 'I'm the guy from the bus stop.'" Ethan almost smiled, but it didn't fully reach his eyes. "It wasn't that simple," he said. Maya crossed her arms lightly, more to steady herself than anything else. "Then what was it?" Ethan hesitated. Not because he didn't have an answer, but because the answer required something he wasn't used to giving. "Honesty. I thought you were pretending," he said finally. The words landed quietly, but they carried weight. Maya blinked. "Pretending?" she repeated. Ethan nodded once. "After the wedding," he said. "After everything. I thought you were just playing a role, like everyone else." Maya let out a small breath. "That I was kind, for a reason." Ethan didn't respond. He didn't have to. Maya shook her head slowly. "I didn't even know who you were," she said. "I know that now." Silence filled the space between them again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. It wasn't distance. It was something closer to truth settling in. Ethan moved slightly closer, his chair rolling softly across the floor. "I've spent most of my life expecting something from people," he said, "or waiting for them to expect something from me." Maya listened, not interrupting, not questioning, just listening. "It's easier that way," he continued. "If everything is a transaction, you know where you stand." Maya nodded slowly. "And if it's not?" she asked. Ethan met her gaze. "Then you don't know what to trust." The words were simple, but they carried years behind them. Maya looked down for a moment, then said, "I wasn't trying to be anything that night." Ethan didn't move. "I believe you," he said. And that, more than anything else, changed something inside her, because belief had never come easily in her life. Not from the people who were supposed to know her best. Not from the ones who should have trusted her without question. And yet here he was, the man who had doubted her from the beginning, now choosing to believe her. The rain outside had softened, the steady rhythm against the glass fading into something quieter, more distant. Maya walked back toward the window. Ethan followed, stopping beside her. They stood there in silence for a while, watching, thinking, processing. And then Maya spoke. "What happened after I left?" Ethan glanced at her. "That night," she clarified. Ethan leaned back slightly. "Not much," he said. "I got in the car, went home." Maya tilted her head. "That's it?" Ethan nodded. "That's it." Maya studied him. "You don't sound like someone who forgot it." Ethan didn't answer right away, because he hadn't, not even close. "I didn't forget," he admitted. Maya's eyes softened slightly. "Why not?" Ethan looked at her. Really looked. "Because you didn't treat me like I was broken," he said. The words were quiet, but they held something deeper. Maya swallowed. "I didn't see you that way," she replied. Ethan nodded. "That's the point." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to, because everything that mattered had already been said, or understood. Maya turned slightly, facing him more fully now. "So what happens now?" she asked. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Maya hesitated. "We didn't choose this, but we're here anyway." Ethan considered the question, then said, "Then we figure out what to do with it." Maya nodded slowly. "And if we can't?" Ethan held her gaze. "Then we try anyway." There was no certainty in his voice. No promise, just effort. And somehow, that felt more real than anything else she had heard since she arrived. The days that followed didn't change everything, but they changed enough. Ethan started asking questions, not big ones, not intrusive, just small things. What she liked to cook, what her mornings used to look like, what made her stay at the soup kitchen even when she didn't have to. Maya answered, at first, cautiously, then more easily, because he listened. Really listened. Not like someone waiting for their turn to speak, but like someone trying to understand. One evening, they sat together in the living room. No work, no distractions, just quiet. Maya glanced at him. "You don't have to sit here," she said. "I know you have things to do." Ethan shook his head. "I'm exactly where I want to be." The words surprised both of them. Maya looked away slightly, not because she didn't believe him, but because she wasn't used to hearing things like that. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of distance, still habits that hadn't changed, still walls that didn't come down easily. But something had started, something neither of them expected, and neither of them fully understood. That night, Maya stood in her room, looking out at the city again. The lights stretched endlessly, glowing softly in the distance. She rested her hand against the glass, and for the first time since she arrived, the thought that crossed her mind wasn't about escape. It wasn't about survival. It was something else. something quieter. What if this didn't have to be the end of her story, but the beginning of something she never expected? Down the hall, Ethan sat alone in his study, the same room, the same desk, the same papers. But his mind wasn't on any of it. It was on her. On the way she had looked at him when she realized who he was. On the way she had spoken, without fear, without expectation, without wanting anything in return. He leaned back in his chair, let out a slow breath, and for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to consider something he had long dismissed. Not control, not obligation, something else, something uncertain, something real. And for the first time, he didn't push it away, because somewhere between a rainy night at a bus stop and a marriage neither of them had chosen, he had found something he didn't expect, someone he didn't understand, and a chance he wasn't sure he deserved, but wasn't ready to lose. That feeling stayed with Ethan longer than he expected. It wasn't loud. It didn't demand attention. But it was there, in the quiet moments, in the way he looked at her when she wasn't paying attention, in the way he found himself choosing to stay in the same room, even when he had no reason to. And for the first time in years, he didn't try to shut it down. Life inside the Whitmore estates slowly found a new rhythm, one that didn't feel forced, one that didn't feel like a transaction. Maya still woke early, still moved through the house with quiet purpose, but now, she didn't feel like she was just passing through it. She belonged. Not fully, not completely, but enough to breathe. Enough to stand still without feeling like she needed permission. Ethan noticed it, the way she laughed a little easier, the way her shoulders weren't always tense, the way the staff no longer looked through her. But at her, respect had replaced doubt. And strangely, it made him proud. It happened on a late afternoon. The sun was low, casting long golden light across the marble floors. Maya was in the garden, kneeling near a small patch of flowers. She wasn't dressed like someone who belonged in a place like this. Simple, practical, real. Her hands were in the soil, gently pressing roots into place. Ethan watched her from the doorway. He had come outside without thinking. Drawn by something he couldn't quite explain. Those won't survive if you overwater them. Maya looked up, surprised. "You've been watching?" Ethan shrugged slightly. "Long enough," Maya smiled faintly. "I'm trying to fix them," she said. Ethan moved closer. They weren't broken. Maya brushed dirt from her hands. They were forgotten. The words lingered. Ethan didn't respond right away, because he understood exactly what she meant. The sound of tires on gravel broke the moment. Both of them turned. A car had pulled up near the front of the house. Unfamiliar, uninvited. Smile faded. Something in her chest tightened instantly. She didn't know why, not yet, but her body recognized the feeling before her mind did. Ethan noticed the change. "You okay?" he asked. Maya didn't answer, because the car door opened, and the past stepped out. Her father, Marcus Carter. He looked different, not in the way people change slowly over time, but in the way someone changes when life has stripped something away. His suit wasn't tailored anymore. His posture wasn't as firm, even from a distance. He looked smaller. Maya stood slowly, her hands still dusted with soil, her heart beginning to beat harder. "What is he doing here?" she whispered. Ethan's expression shifted. "You know him?" Maya let out a soft, bitter breath. "That's my father." Inside the house, the air changed instantly. The staff stepped aside, not out of respect, but out of uncertainty. Marcus walked in like a man trying to remember what confidence felt like, but it didn't sit right on him anymore. Ethan waited in the main room. Maya stood a few steps behind, not hiding, but not stepping forward either. Marcus stopped when he saw her. For a moment, he didn't speak, he just looked, like he wasn't sure she was real. "Maya," he said finally. Her name sounded different in his mouth. like something he hadn't used in a long time. Maya didn't move. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Her voice wasn't angry, it was calm, but distant. Marcus swallowed. "I need to talk to you." Maya shook her head slightly. "No," she said. "You need something from me." The truth landed quickly, sharp, accurate. Marcus's eyes flickered, then dropped. "I made mistakes," he said. Maya almost laughed, but the sound didn't come out. "Mistakes?" she repeated. Ethan remained silent, watching, not stepping in, because he understood this moment didn't belong to him. Marcus took a step closer. "I lost everything," he said. The words came out heavy, like he had been carrying them for a long time. "The business. It's gone. The house is gone. Ashley and your stepmother." He paused. "They left." Maya felt something shift inside her. Not sympathy, not yet, just something. "They always had somewhere else to go," she said quietly. Marcus nodded. "I don't," he admitted. Silence filled the room. Maya looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, she saw it. Not power, not authority, just a man, alone, broken, and afraid. "I came to ask for help," Marcus said. There it was, the reason, the truth. Maya closed her eyes for a moment. The memories came back fast, too fast. The locked door, the hunger, the silence, the moment he had chosen to give her away. Like she didn't matter, she opened her eyes again. "And you thought of me?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "You're all I have left." The words hit harder than she expected, because once, she would have done anything to hear something like that. Once, she had begged to be enough. Now, it felt different, empty, too late. Ethan moved slightly forward, not to interrupt, just enough to stand beside her. Not in front, not behind. Beside, Maya noticed, and something inside her steadied. Marcus looked between them. "You married well," he said. The words carried something old, something familiar, value measured in wealth, in status. Maya's expression hardened slightly. "I didn't marry for that," she said. Marcus hesitated, then nodded quickly. "Of course," he said. "Of course." But the truth was already clear. "What do you want?" Maya asked. Marcus took a breath. "I need money," he said. The room fell silent again. Maya didn't react immediately. She just stood there, processing, feeling, remembering. "You didn't come to see if I was okay," she said slowly. Marcus didn't answer. "You didn't come to ask how I've been," she continued. Still no answer. "You came because you needed something." Marcus's shoulders dropped slightly. "Yes," he said. The honesty surprised her, but it didn't change anything. Ethan finally spoke. "Why should she help you?" he asked. His voice was calm but firm. Marcus looked at him, because for the first time, someone was asking the question Maya had never been allowed to ask. "I'm her mother," Marcus said. Ethan didn't blink. "That hasn't meant much to you before." The words landed cleanly. Marcus flinched slightly. Maya felt it. Not satisfaction, just truth. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Marcus said quickly. "I just need a chance." Maya's hands tightened slightly at her sides. A chance, the words echoed in her mind, because she had never been given one. Not when she needed it most. The room held its breath, waiting for her, for what she would say, for what she would choose, and for the first time in her life. Maya realized something. This decision was hers. The realization settled into Maya's chest slowly. Not like a wave, not like a storm, but like something quiet finally finding its place. For so many years, her life had been shaped by other people's choices, where she lived, what she endured, who she had to become just to survive. But now, for the first time, no one was forcing her hand, no one was closing doors. No one was deciding her worth. She looked at her father. Really looked at him. The man who had once filled every room with authority now stood there, uncertain, waiting, smaller, not in size but in power. And in that moment, Maya understood something that surprised her. He didn't have control over her anymore, not even a little. Marcus shifted under her gaze. "Maya!" he started, but she raised her hand gently, not to silence him, just to pause him. "I'm going to say something," she said, "and I need you to listen." Marcus nodded quickly. "Of course." Maya took a breath, not because she didn't know what to say, but because she wanted to say it clearly, without anger, without fear. "I spent my whole life trying to be enough for you," she said. The words were steady, grounded. Marcus's face tightened slightly. "I did everything you asked," she continued. "Even when it hurt. Even when it didn't make sense. Even when I knew it wasn't fair." Ethan stood quietly beside her, not interrupting, but present. "I thought if I tried hard enough," Maya added, "you'd finally see me." Her voice softened slightly. "But you never did." The silence that followed was heavy, not uncomfortable, just honest. Marcus looked down. "I was wrong," he said quietly. Maya nodded. "Yes," she said. "No anger, no accusation, just truth." She took another breath. "And then you made a choice for me," she said. "A big one." Marcus swallowed. "I know. You didn't ask me," Maya continued. "You didn't think about what I wanted. You just decided." Her voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to, because every word carried weight. Marcus's hands trembled slightly. "I was desperate," he said. Maya nodded again. "I know." That surprised him. He looked up. "You know? I know what desperation feels like," she said. The words landed differently this time, because they weren't coming from judgment. They were coming from experience, from understanding, and that made them harder to ignore. Maya stepped a little closer, not to comfort him, but to make sure he heard her clearly. "I'm not that girl anymore," she said. Marcus's breath caught. "The one who waited for you to choose her," she added. Her voice didn't shake. "Not this time." "I've built something else," she said. Marcus looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, he saw it. Not just the daughter he had overlooked, but the woman she had become, strong, steady, whole. "I forgive you," Maya said. The words came softly, but they filled the room. Marcus blinked. "You do?" Maya nodded. "Yes." Tears filled his eyes. "I don't deserve that." Maya gave a small, almost sad smile. "This isn't about what you deserve," she said. "It's about what I need." Marcus's expression shifted, confused. "What do you mean?" Maya looked at him calmly. "I don't want to carry this anymore," she said. "The anger, the pain, the waiting." Her voice softened. "I'm done with that." The words didn't feel heavy. They felt freeing, like something she had been holding onto for too long had finally been set down. Marcus wiped his face quickly. "Thank you," he said. The words were quiet, sincere. But Maya didn't respond right away, because forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, and it didn't mean going back. "I will help you," she said. Marcus's head lifted quickly. Hope flickered across his face. "Really?" Maya nodded once. "Yes." Relief flooded through him. "I won't let you down this time." "But," Maya added gently. The word stopped him. "I'm not doing this because you're my father," she said. The truth landed cleanly. "I'm doing this because I choose to," she continued. "Because that's who I am." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding beginning to settle in. "And things won't go back to the way they were," Maya said. "There is no way they were anymore." Marcus swallowed. "I understand." And this time, he meant it. Ethan stepped forward slightly, not to take over, but to stand with her. I'll have someone arrange everything, he said. Marcus nodded gratefully. Thank you, but his eyes returned to Maya. Because he knew this wasn't coming from Ethan. This was her decision, her choice, her strength. After Marcus left, the house fell quiet again, but it wasn't the same quiet as before. This one felt complete, like something had finally been resolved. Maya stood in the same spot for a moment, then let out a slow breath. Ethan looked at her. You okay? He asked. Maya nodded. Yes, and for the first time, she meant it without hesitation. That evening, the sky turned a soft gold as the sun began to set. Maya stood outside in the garden again, the same place, the same flowers, but everything felt different. Ethan joined her, his chair moving quietly across the stone path. You didn't have to do that, he said. Maya glanced at him. I know. Ethan studied her. Then why did you? Maya looked back at the horizon, the light stretching across the sky. Warm, endless. Because I'm not who I used to be, she said. Ethan nodded slowly. I can see that. Maya smiled, not the small, careful smile she used to give, but something softer, something real. I don't need anyone to choose me anymore, she said. The words felt different as she said them. Lighter, truer. Ethan looked at her, and yet, he said. Maya turned to him, and yet, she asked. Ethan held her gaze. I still do. The moment held quiet, steady. Maya didn't look away, because for the first time in her life, being chosen didn't feel like something she had to earn. It felt like something she could accept. Months later, the change in her life was undeniable, not because of the house, or the wealth, or the name she now carried, but because of what she had built with it. The soup kitchen she once worked in had grown, expanded, turned into something bigger, a foundation that helped families who had nowhere else to go, children who needed support, people who had been overlooked, just like she had been. Ethan stood beside her through it all, not as someone in control, but as someone who believed, who supported, who stayed, and together, they created something neither of them had expected. Not a perfect life, but a real one. One evening, Maya stood by the doorway of the foundation's main building. The sound of laughter filled the space, children running, voices rising, life moving. Ethan watched from a distance, then moved closer. You did this, he said. Maya shook her head. We did this. Ethan smiled slightly, and this time, it reached his eyes. Later that night, back at home, Maya stood at the window once more. The city lights stretched out before her, familiar now, comforting. Ethan came to stand beside her, not saying anything, not needing to. Maya rested her hand lightly against the glass, then turned to him. I used to think I was invisible, she said. Ethan shook his head. Never, he replied. Maya smiled softly. I just needed to find the right place, she said. Ethan reached for her hand. And the right person, he added. Maya didn't pull away, because now she knew exactly where she belonged. Not in a house, not in a name, but in a life where she was seen, where she was valued, where she was loved. And for the first time, she wasn't waiting for someone to choose her. She had already been chosen, and more importantly, she had chosen herself. Because in the end, it wasn't the wedding in Beverly Hills or the mansion that changed Maya's life. It was the moment she stood in that room, looked at the man who once gave her away, and chose peace instead of pain. Sometimes, the real cost of judgment doesn't show up right away. It waits until everything else is gone. And by then, the only thing left is the truth you can't run from, just like Marcus had to face. So tonight, think about one person you may have overlooked or misunderstood. Maybe just pause, listen, or offer something small. Because you never know. You might be standing in front of someone like Maya, and that moment could matter more than you think. If this story touched you, comment 1 below. I'd really love to hear from you. And tell me, have you ever had to forgive someone who didn't deserve it? There's another story coming up next, one that might change the way you see people even more.